Hello and welcome.
Early
conversations around democracy.
Must revisit the institutions of democracy.
Thank you for these discussions that you give different perspectives of the Swedish government to support democracy in Nigeria, but especially as I thank you for the cooperation with Yiaga.
If we lay the foundation for Nigeria in the 20 years of democracy that we've had so far, the appointive and elective positions that we found women in have been, it hasn't been a very steady progression. Some years we have, during some dispensations, we have a certain number of women and we're applauding that. And then another time comes and we have even less women than we did back then. Currently, out of 469 members of the National Assembly, only 21 are women. And that makes up, 5.8%? And out of 991 state legislators who are representing in state house assemblies, right now the percentage of women comes to about 4.43%. If we're talking Nigeria's general population, we have 49.23% as women. That's nearly half the number. Yet we're still having this discussion about women's participation in democracy. There are a number of things that people have to say about Nigeria's democracy, but we can all agree that women are an important part of the conversation. So, Ambassador?
Thank you so much. We intend to arrange, as I mentioned, democracy talks like this around the world during this year to prepare for a planned event called Stockholm Democracy Talks in 2021. Hopefully, after the corona crisis, it will take place next year. And the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Sweden, which I represent in Abuja, has identified 10 priority areas for this drive for democracy. The Swedish feminist foreign policy, because it goes together, and we try to focus on gender equality in everything that we do. Because we're convinced that equality between men and women is beneficial to everybody. And especially if you look at sustainability, if you want to have a peaceful and sustainable development, not least in Africa, you need to include women. And it is definitely a pillar of democracy as we see it.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Honorable Taiwo Olukemi Oluga is the chair of the House Committee on Female Parliamentarians and one of Nigeria's representatives at the Pan-African Parliament in South Africa. Now, as a sitting member, as someone who has been democratically elected into Nigeria's government, I find it very interesting that for women's participation, every time we talk about it in Nigeria, with how abysmal it is, how low it is, we at least know that most of the time it seems that women are found in appointed positions more than elected positions. But you happen to be a woman who was elected into a position that you are currently holding. So I want to know from your end, tell us, what exactly were the things that you had to overcome to get this particular seat that you occupy at this point?
The kind of politics we practice in this part of the country is masculine. It is now that we're overcoming the fear. It is now that we're overcoming all the stigmatization, because if you get yourself involved in politics, they give you all sorts of names. It is now we're overcoming the financial implication of going into politics, because the kind of politics we practice here is a little bit expensive. I said that from them. So if we look at all those things, it is now, and I believe it's a gradual thing. We are not yet there, but I want to salute all the women that have contested across party boards in one position or the other, starting from the local government to the state to the federal level. And kudos to them, and we have quite a number of them, of us, and we're doing well. And let me say specifically that I think if we go by the number of women that we have now, we're improving. And the kind of thing we're doing as the chairman woman in parliament if not for this, the pandemic, coronavirus pandemic, by now we will have been into our national summit that we intend to do, because most of the states we're going to start our elections from next, we're going to have Edo, for example, Edo election this year. Then from my state, we're going to have it in 2022 and so on and so forth. So we're planning before that we need to move around the 6 geopolitical zone to sensitize all the women. And how do we plan to do it? We were planning of going even to the grassroots, because we have to take over from the grassroots, start from the councillorship, from your ward, up to the federal level. And by the time we're doing that, and we are evidence, and there are sensitization, enough sensitization, and we let them know that the major thing that they may be considering as an obstacle, which is the finances. We have some partners now that are ready to partner with us. As if you're going into any political position, once you know once you are informed, you will not be deformed. But I think the information was not really going down. That was why people were thinking, especially women, were thinking before that if you are not financially buoyant, you may not be able to contest. But now that we have so many donors, partners, especially Yiaga and Co., they are ready. They're not going to give us the cash, but they're ready to sponsor.
We're receiving a few comments from those who are watching us right now. So this very first comment said, he's glad that we are having this conversation, because as far as he's concerned, 4.43% is a poor representation. And we have another comment that says inclusion of women in Nigerian politics is urgently needed. We still have a couple more comments, with one from Rosemary, who said that we need to revisit the institution of democracy. And that particular comment is very interesting. But before I come to our speakers, I want to take this other comment that has come in from Dacho Mochai, who says the women have to first believe in their capacity and pull in resources into electoral processes in order to have a stake in the system. So this comment is also very interesting. Honorable, what do you think about this? The fact that this particular participant says that women have to first believe in their capacity and pull in resources into the electoral processes. What do you think about that? Do you agree with it?
We're planning as a committee to get a database. Once we get a database, that if we know from across the country, for example, how many people are going to contest for the State House of Assemblies, how many are going to do this, how many are financially buoyant enough, how many are we going to support, how many are we going to canvass for, how many are we going for their campaigns, and so on and so forth. So one of the major things that we have to do as a committee, Women in Parliament, for this 9th National Assembly, to see that the figure increase from the one that we have now. Actually, now it is unacceptable, the figure we have now, because as we speak, we only have in totality National Assembly, both the Senate and the House of Reps, we have only 19 women to care about. And at our State House of Assembly, I tell you, we only have just 45 women across the country. So that we're looking at, and we're trying to see that moving around by the committee to see how we can sensitize more women and to talk to the leadership of each party in each state. That will go a long way to give them the courage and the boldness, because if we have done that, we have given them the platform. Yeah.
All right. So usually when people talk about obstacles, especially in Nigeria, the very first thing they talk about is finances. Now, outside of finances, because I mean, there's a lot about Nigeria's democratic processes that the electorate, the people, they don't know about it. So outside of the trouble of finance, what other troubles did you face in getting to your own position right now?
I said some of it. Another obstacle is that you may be named, because you may be named, given different kinds of names, stigmatization of maybe she's wayward, or she's this, she's that, and that puts a lot of women back in politics because you want to maintain your dignity. But we're out here to tell people that you can go into politics with integrity and your dignity not upturned. That's why I said we're planning as a committee to move around to tell them that you can go into politics without being abused or being stigmatized in any way.
We know that democracy thrives on the pillars of inclusion. I mean, when you hear democracy, you automatically think inclusion. It might as well be the same word. And, you also think about participation of all groups and interests in the society. But Nigerian women have largely been marginalized. What do you think is responsible for this issue? And if we are to move forward, what are the measures that we can take to improve women's participation?
Well, inclusion is practices of democracy. But, we have a democracy in Nigeria that is non-inclusive. All right? Our own genre of democracy is non-inclusive, and people seem to be getting on with it just fine. We are still at the stage of advocating for a place at the table. I'll say that democracy is an expression, particularly the Nigerian brand of democracy, is an expression of an extension of patriarchy and an expression of power. All right? In spite of the beautiful legislations we have, constitutional provisions, African Charter of Human and People's Rights, women, we have these laws that are trying to bring women to the democratic table. But it does appear that the actors, the drivers of the Nigerian democracy, are just practicing it as an extension of their part of patriarchy. They are bringing their religious sentiments, they are bringing their cultural sentiments to bear in the Nigeria particular brand of democracy we practice. And so, for the Nigerian woman to emerge and be counted on the democratic table, what we must do is we must re-engineer the way the institutions view the Nigerian women. Before now, we have done a lot of advocacy on providing resources for women, educating women, encouraging them to participate. But the results are marginal. And so we must revisit the institutions of democracy. We must revisit the institutions of democracy. Let's look at INEC, for instance. Let's look at the political parties. Let's look at the justice system. How does these institutions relate to the Nigerian women? Because eventually these things translate into interpretations of rights, which eventually feed into the notion of power. There are 12 national commissioners of INEC. All right, we have only about 2 women. Look at the resident electoral commissioners in the states. We have only one woman. And so you find that even though the law provides that Nigerian women should be involved in all electoral processes, I'm looking at Article 9 of the Protocol of the African Charter. It says, Article 9b, women should be equally represented at all levels with men in all electoral processes. This is the law. Now, in spite of this provision, you still see that you just have to look for women and say, where are the women in this electoral process? Where are the women rec? Where are the women national commissioners? You don't find them. And so because women do not relate, are not in the institutions that drive democracy in this country, it also affects the number of women who participate. Definitely. It gives the idea that, democracy is a masculinist venture. It is the men that control democracy.
I asked a question earlier about the role that political parties play in giving women the opportunity or opening up opportunities for women to be part of the democratic process. How do you think political parties come into the mix? Have they done enough? Are the citizens themselves also taking advantage of these opportunities? How exactly can we change democracy from male to equal?
Political parties, will not ordinarily give away their position, concede their positions of power to women because they are women. They will not do it. All right? If anything, as a student of power, I know that power seeks to be more powerful. All right? So we need positive legislation to ensure that for all positions, be it particularly executive positions in the political parties, that we have as much men as women. That's number one. And secondly, for all elective offices, be it in the state or national, local government elections, INEC should ensure that both sexes are equally fielded as flag bearers for political parties. Otherwise, the political parties, which is presently male-dominated, will not concede their positions of power. They will not make themselves less powerful because women are asking them to. So we need law. On the issue of women pooling resources to contest for elections, you see, it's not about resources. Look at the recent experience of Natasha Akpoti in Kogi. Look at the recent experience PDP woman leader whose house was burnt down. She was inside that house. It's not about resources to conduct elections. It's about a system that is, that is opposed to anything feminine, that does not encourage female participation. It's not about having money. It's about structures that are non-feminine, structures that do not support female participation. And so that is why we are proposing again that our democratic structures must deliberately be made to recognize and indeed support, the participation of females.
Now, this particular respondent says that there are many obstacles that discourage women from participating in politics. The major problem is our cultural norms, but I am glad we are conquering these obstacles. And this last comment coming from Mukhtar Chawai. Mukhtar is proposing a way to get women more involved in the democratic process. And he says it's important to have more women as part of the executives from ward level and upwards. This can be achieved by having many women register as card-carrying members. They can heavily influence decisions and insist on greater participation. So, especially Mukhtar's comment, Honorable, do you think that not many women are actually active members of political parties in the country? I mean, Nigeria has quite a number of political parties. So is that the problem? Is it that women are not card-carrying official members?
I'm not in agreement with Tyrese comment that women have not registered enough. That's not the issue. As much as I appreciate our barrister contribution, if we keep saying this, we'll be creating more fear. What is the way out? To get more women into elective position in this our democratic setting. One, she said it. We have to legislate it, and that we have started as a committee, this 9th National Assembly. And I want to say one of the achievements we have recorded, that all the women in the parliament will be part of a constitutional review committee. That we were able to achieve. And that happened at the Senate too. If you have about 20 women at the constitutional review committee, you can imagine. And before then, we're going to have a roundtable discussion that we have started out. If you call A, we're saying the same thing. If you call B, we're saying the same thing. All of us will be saying the same thing, by sharing our points that we should be given a percentage. And what is the percentage? Going by me, if you ask me, I will tell you that it is 50-50. No gender should be more than 50%, whether in elective or appointed. So we are going to review the constitution. We're going to do it together. The non-governmental, they are going to help us who are women in business, all these groups. We're going to do it together. That they should give us 50-50. No gender should be more than 50%. Okay, if we go by 50 and they are giving us 60-40, if they are taking 60 and we are taking 40, not even 35% affirmative action that was resolved 25 years ago in Beijing. No, we are not going by that again.
Women in parliament should also strategize on how to get the men's support, because as it is now, the men are in the majority. Yeah. So you need to galvanize their support.
Yeah, that we have started a committee. It's a 18-man committee, so to say. And as we speak, we have about 6 of them on the committee already, that they are he for she. They are always on our side. And not only because they are member of the committee, but when they speak on the floor, they are well-respected men. And they have friends that they can. So we have started doing that underground, so that before we come up with our demand, before we come up with our position rather, so that we will have gotten, because by the time the bill will be brought to the floor, we need their support. That we have started, and I want to say we have left no stone untouched.
With institutions like Yiaga, like the Embassy of Sweden, who are all working together to try to get more women out there, do you think that people will start to think that women don't actually deserve this position, that it's just this mentality?
Yes. Thank you. Individual is entitled to his own thinking, and your own perspective of everything. But it is the women that we are going to show them the stuff we have, because we are women of substance. We're going to show them the stuff we are. So I won't go with that we should be in the kitchen in this contest. Being in the kitchen is dangerous. It's dangerous. All we have to do is to come out, show your stuff, show your intention that you can do it, and I want to do it. Let them know, starting from your local government. Let them know that I am capable. I have all it takes. The orientation will start changing. When they call for meeting, go there. Get there before anybody.
With all of these conversations, the comments that have come into this discussion, your comments and the barrister's comments, it's a cheesy question, but it's a legitimate one. Is there actually hope of an increase in women's participation? Is there any hope? Are we looking to see that over the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah, there is hope. I want to assure you and assure all our viewers that there is hope for women inclusion in participation in this democratic space that we find ourselves. If you go like the history, I will say that we're not yet where we are supposed to be, but not where we were in the last 10 years or 20 years of practicing democracy in Nigeria. It is a gradual process, because the men, they have really dominated the whole space. So for us now to tell them to start shifting or to start taking to their tents is a tough war. And that's why I call on all the non-governmental and all the civil society rather, that it is a battle that we're going to fight together with our committee. And as we go into the Constitution Review Committee, let's see the inclusion in politics in Nigeria. 10, 20 years, I want to assure us that we will have reached our goal. And most importantly, 2023, there's going to be another election into the National Assembly. And I want to say that by the grace of God, we are going to have an increase in the number that we have now. Currently, we're having 13 only at the House of Reps and just 8 at the Senate. So I want to say that we are going to double up our efforts, not only by saying it, but by approaching a true legislative way. And I believe we will get there.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable, for taking time out to talk with us on this particular matter. I hope that the comments that you have made and Barrister Esther Uzoma have made as well will actually go towards, for posterity's sake, that they will contribute to the fight going forward. And for those of you who joined in, as we round up, the truth of the matter is that this particular fight to include women into the democratic space, it's not a fight that's going to end today. It's not a fight that is going to end next year. It's a continuous fight. Before we go, finally, I'm going to cede the floor to the ambassador to give his closing remarks.
Thank you so much. And thank you for these discussions that you give different perspectives of how difficult it is to be a woman in general, I think in Nigeria, but especially as a parliamentarian or politician or trying to get into politics. I think that you really need to start at school early, because if girls don't get to school, they won't end up in parliament or anywhere else, actually.
So I will cede the floor now to Cynthia Mbamalu, Director of Programs for Yiaga. She's going to give us her closing remarks as we bow out. Cynthia.
Yeah. Hello, thank you, Nabilah. And on behalf of the partners, we sincerely appreciate our panelists. Honorable Taiwo Oluga, thank you so much for always making our time when we invite you. We're really impressed and really inspired by your leadership in the National Assembly. The work you're doing with the committee is quite amazing, and we're looking forward to the engagement nationally. And thank you for being part of the panel. Barrister Esther Uzoma, one of my mentors also and leaders of the women movement in Nigeria. We thank you for being part of this. Let's keep the conversation going. We need more women in government. We need a democracy that is truly inclusive and representative. Nabilah, you've been fantastic. Thank you for taking us through this wonderful journey and conversation. Thank you.
Hello and welcome.
Early
conversations around democracy.
First, revisit the institutions of democracy.
Thank you for these discussions that you give different perspectives of the Swedish government to support democracy in Nigeria, but especially as I thank you for the cooperation with Yiaga